This is the creepiest story that anybody's ever sent me, and I'm not exaggerating. It's horrific, and we've got receipts. When I listened to the audio that this person attached to the email, my stomach dropped. And I believe this story to be entirely true. So, for the nature of the story, the person wants to remain anonymous, so we're going to call her Rachel. And Rachel emailed me saying that she's had some creepy messages on her phone since her friend passed away. Now, her friend passed away in 2021 in quite a horrific manner. She was stabbed to death. And that night in particular stands out to Rachel because they actually had plans. She was going to spend the evening together. And while she was driving to her friend's house, she noticed police cars. And when she got to her friend's street, she couldn't even drive down the street because they were already putting up tents and police tape. When she got out of her car and tried to approach the scene, her friend's house, the police stopped her. And that's when Rachel noticed her friend's sandals on the floor with blood surrounding them. And without even hesitation, she picked up these sandals thinking, my friend's going to want these later on. If anything's happened, she's going to be in hospital and she's going to want these sandals. Now, I'm going to add a bit of gallows humour here. This girl picked up evidence. She didn't tell me if the police wanted these sandals back, because the police took all of her friend's belongings in evidence, including her phone. Now, a few weeks after her friend's funeral, Rachel was going about her business and she noticed her phone ringing, and when she looked at the number on the phone, her stomach dropped because it was her friend that had passed away. She didn't know what to do. She didn't know if to pick up, and I guess all these thoughts were in her head all at once, and maybe she thought this is the police's way of getting in touch with her friend. So she picked up the phone and it was just static. There was no one there. So she quickly put down the phone and tried to call the number back, and the number was disconnected. What is it about creepy phone calls, man? It's just, they really, really scare me. This happened to Rachel for a few months, and Rachel, I guess, was quite close with her friend's family because she checked in with her mum every now and then just to see how they're doing since her daughter's passing. And I guess in some conversations, it was still mentioned that her friend's belongings were still in evidence, including her friend's phone. So Rachel had no idea how her friend's number was calling her phone. Like I said, these calls happened quite far and few in between. And when it approached to nearly the 1 year anniversary to her friend's passing, Rachel saw her friend's phone number on her screen calling her phone. This time, she pressed to end the call. She accidentally pressed go to voicemail, and a voicemail was left, and she sent me that voicemail. I'm going to play that audio for you in a moment. It's not very long at all, and to really listen to it, you're going to want to put your phone up to your ear. For those of you that don't listen to the audio, it sounds like static, kind of when you put two electrical devices together and they have this weird reverberation, I think that's the right word, where they bounce off each other. It also sounds like somebody's trying to speak. I don't know if it's a female voice or a male voice, and then a really ominous laugh can be heard right at the end. Like, this laugh sounds like Bowser's laugh. It's like ha ha ha. It doesn't sound like a real human laugh. So that audio really creeped me out, and as you imagine, it really creeped Rachel out. She says that when she listened to that voicemail, she thought it was somebody trying to mock her and somebody trying to make fun of it. That voicemail happened while that phone was disconnected and in the police locker. So she doesn't know how she's receiving these calls. I don't know if that was the last time she experienced a phone call because she hasn't told me, but she wanted to share this story with me, with you guys. What do you think? Because I honestly think this story is terrifying and I don't like it. I also forgot to mention that she sent me a screenshot of a local article writing about this specific crime. That's why I believe this story to be true. Because she wants to remain anonymous, I'm not going to attach that article, but just know that I wouldn't lie about it. It's not a fun experience, especially since this actually happened to her. So what do we think it is?
They trapped 2 duendes, and this is what they did to them in Veracruz. A very, very long time ago, there was a girl named Cristina who had just gotten married. At the time, the man that Cristina married was like some sort of captain in this town, so she had to move to the town where they were in. And unfortunately, she explains that the town was like surrounded by nothing. Like, it was just the town and nothingness for like a long time. With time, she said that weird things started happening to Cristina. She would end up waking up in the middle of the night because she would feel a lot of pressure on her chest, almost like if something was on her. When this would happen to her, she couldn't move, she couldn't scream, she couldn't like do anything. She honestly tried to tell herself that she was just having really bad nightmares, even though she knew that they were not nightmares or dreams. She was fully awake. So months would pass, and then things got even stranger because now she was waking up with like a piece of her hair being braided. At first, she was thinking like, what if I did this to myself in my sleep? But then the braids would continue to be there every single morning, and not just that, but they became more tighter, more entangled, to the point where she had to work really hard to like take that braid off of her hair. A little while after that, they actually found out that she was pregnant, and everybody in her family was really happy. Her and her husband was so happy about them having their first baby. However, those braids on her hair didn't stop appearing every single morning when she would wake up. By this point, she was waking up with 1 or 2 or even 3 braids in her hair, and the weird thing was that now anytime she would try to undo those braids, she would get like really bad headaches in the process. By this point, she had given birth to a really beautiful baby girl, and everybody in the family was so excited about her. Everything seemed to go back to normal until one day when Cristina was out in her yard. She was washing clothes and hanging it, and this is the moment that changed her life forever. That's when she went inside of her house to check in on the baby. The baby was in the crib, and when she looked in the crib, the baby was nowhere to be found. She started screaming. She was desperately trying to find her child. She couldn't find her anywhere. She ends up calling her husband, calling the neighbors, and no one could find this baby. Not only did they go house by house, they went into like the farmland, they went everywhere, every corner, and this baby was never found. They were never able to find this baby, and with time, a lot of resentment grew, and the husband was blaming her for losing the child, being that she was the one that was taking care of her. By this point, the arguments were really bad, and they decided to get a divorce, and she ends up moving back in with her parents. Cristina's heart was broken. Not only did she lose her baby girl, but now she's going through a divorce, and just when she was finally getting her life back together as normal as she could, it had been like a year or 2 that have passed, she ends up falling in love again. She's so in love with this guy that she marries him, and she ends up moving in with him as well. Everything was going good with her second husband until things started feeling a little too weird, and she finds out that she is pregnant again. At this point, she's living with her husband and her mother-in-law, and she should be happy because she's pregnant, but the mother-in-law would see that she looked really worried, that she looked really scared, and she decided to ask her why she was so scared if she should be so happy that she was pregnant. Cristina, in between tears, obviously tells her everything that happened, you know, the disappearance of her daughter, you know, the dreams that she would have, all these weird things that were happening, and obviously that she is scared that it might happen again to this baby. Her mother-in-law looked at her really seriously and said, hey, you know that what happened to you isn't normal, and it kind of sounds like you have duendes around you, and maybe they marked you. They think that you belong to them, and if you do nothing about it, they may take away the second baby as well. Obviously, Cristina is now scared and worried, and she's like, well, what can we do about it? And the mother-in-law is like, let's set up a trap. I like that lady. I like her. The mother-in-law was like, you need to promise me one thing. When we set the trap up and you're there at night, do not turn and look for nothing in the world. We need this plan to work, and we need to make sure we get rid of them. And she's like, okay, I promise you. So the mother-in-law is like, we need 3 things. We need a new stack of cards, we need a cowboy hat, and we need a part of an anise plant. I don't know what that is. If I find it, I'll put it on the screen right here. That very night, after getting those 3 things, they ended up placing these things in the very corner of the bedroom. The mother-in-law sat in the corner of the bed, just very quietly, very still, with a piece of a branch of anise, but it was blessed. She was about to whoop somebody's ass. Anyways, the daughter-in-law was laying in bed very still, pretending to be asleep. By this point, it was midnight, and that is when they started to hear something strange in the bedroom. That it looked like something was being moved, and that it sounded like children laughing. The mother-in-law, sitting there without moving, is witnessing 2 little deformed men with pointy hats fighting over that cup that they had placed in the corner of the room. It was definitely the duendes, and in that very moment, the mother-in-law screams out loud, ahora hija, ahora, ahora, which means now daughter, now. Cristina without any hesitation, without thinking twice about what the fuck she was about to do, jumps out of bed. The mother-in-law does too, and they both start beating these duendes with those blessed branches of anise over and over again. They explain that as they're hitting them with these branches, you know that shit hurts, because if you have a Mexican mom, at one point you probably hit with a branch, okay? Yeah. She explains that they were screaming in agony, that it almost sounded like animal noises, and they were crying out loud, getting beat the fuck up. By this point, Cristina had no control. She was beating them up, and she in the middle of her like hitting them, she was screaming at them, "Leave me alone, you're not gonna take away my child, you're not gonna take this child away from me." By this point, they had beaten these duendes up to the point where they had managed to like walk from the bedroom to where the door is, and then they got lost in like the farmland and bushes and stuff. After that night, when the duendes disappeared, the ranch felt a silence that it hadn't been felt before, and after this, there was no more braids in her hair. The duendes never came back. Cristina was actually able to continue her life without being bothered, and she ended up having a lot more children than the one she had. However, as you might imagine, she still had to live with the pain of that very first baby girl being missing and her not being able to do about it. Even on her deathbed, that was the only thing that she could think about. And by deathbed, I mean she died of old age. She didn't just like die right after that. No, she got to live her life and have all these kids, but unfortunately, when she was in bed, you know, about to pass away, that was the only thing that she was able to talk about, and she just really wanted to know where that little baby girl was. She was wondering if the duendes maybe still had her child, and if they were at the very least taking care of that baby girl.
Hello and welcome back to a series of spooky stories, The Haunted Tea Spill. This series is brought to you by all things spooky and ungodly amounts of paranormal activity. Featuring my smart ring, it keeps up with stress, sleep, oxygen saturation, even like body temperature, activity, steps, all that jazz. The first one that they had sent me was a gold one, and then they asked if I wanted the pink one. So I said yes, obviously, because I love pink. So there is another option. It's just this one is linked down here. Now into the story. I have a few stories, but this one is probably the scariest. This happened a long time ago, but went on for years and years. When I was around 11, my sister and I were playing with our Barbies in the hallway when I saw a spirit of a little boy run down the hall. His whole body and outfit was sepia colored, like he just walked out of an old-time photo. And he was in a typical page boy outfit. Hat, overalls, the works. It scared me, and we ran to our mom who was doing dishes. Not long later, my mom and I heard crying, and I didn't see anything, but she started screaming. She said there was a little girl crying in the corner. We saw them more and more the following days. They showed up in our dreams, and we even played with them. They told us their names were Katie and Jacob. I would feel my hair being pulled, and my mom would, unprovoked, tell me that Katie was playing with my hair. Tell her not to. Tell her not to touch me. I had dreamt that my sister was showing them how to ride on her scooter, and then I woke up. My mom asked me where my sister was, to which she said that she was outside, showing them how to ride a scooter. We would play dress up with Katie. We would lay out a dress and leave the room. When we came back, the dress was moved. Jacob told us that he lost his baseball glove in the woods, and we actually found a glove from his estimated time period. Here's where it gets scary. This ain't scary to you. One night, our dog started growling at the door. Then someone very loudly started banging on it. I felt panic, and they told my mom that it was the bad man. The bad man. Katie went on to tell our mom and even showed me in a dream what happened to them / how they died. The land we lived on used to belong to their family. Their father owned slaves, and the bad man was one of those slaves. Jacob and his mother had passed away from a cough, what we assume is tuberculosis, but Katie suffered a worse fate. The bad man had R-worded and murdered her. The father, upon finding her body, beat the man to death and unalived himself not long after. Katie and Jacob, for whatever reason, stayed around but hid in our house, a mobile home that was recently placed there, because the bad man, being a slave, was not allowed in the house. What he turned into, however, was a terrifying spirit, almost a demon, but not quite. I didn't see what he became, only what he looked like in life until a few years later. Fast forward, I was going back to my dad's house, and Katie asked if she could come with me. I stupidly told her yes. Listen, I know, but I was a kid, and she was my friend. Okay. That very night, my dad and I both heard a little girl say hello, but we couldn't locate where the voice came from. That was the last time for a long time that anything odd happened at my dad's until we moved.
When we moved into our new house, we would hear knocking on the outer walls, the radio would come on by itself in the middle of the night, etc. Once I was telling my friends the story and my bedroom lights went out and the radio downstairs turned on. This went on for a few years, so we'll fast forward. I had just turned 16 and my dad had passed away. I moved in with my grandmother and we lived with her there before, so I just moved back into my childhood home. The woods behind the house felt darker. I could hear singing and whistling coming from them, and I always felt watched. Not the singing and the whistling in the woods. One day my husband, then boyfriend, was over, and he was leaving, and he called me and said, "There's a man in your backyard. He just went into the woods." He described the man, and I felt a pit in my stomach. I had to beg him to just leave and not get out of his truck. Bitch, why the fuck what are you gonna do? Go after him into the fucking woods? Sit the fuck down and drive off. That's when things took a turn. I started having dreams about Katie and Jacob again, except for the bad man was always there too. One night he tested the boundaries and came inside the house and showed me his true form. He stood over 6 foot tall, his eyes were stark white, his smile reached ear to ear. I don't like it when y'all tell me that. It gives me the heebs-jeebs. His teeth were so white they seemed to glow against his dark skin, empty, soulless eyes and sinister teeth. That's what I remember the most. The knocking started again, and there were fist marks on the side of the house higher than any human could have reached without a ladder. When the baseball glove I mentioned earlier was found, Katie and Jacob disappeared. I never saw them again, but the bad man stuck around. My sister assumed that it was because I somewhat looked like Katie and was around her age, so he attached himself to me when Katie came to my dad's house with me. And you thought it was a good idea to say yes. Things calmed down a bit after I started cleansing the house, but after a few years I called a friend of mine who is a priest, and he bound the spirit to a specific piece of land, one that is surrounded by rivers, so he cannot cross the rivers. Can crazy spirits not cross water? I don't know, that's a legitimate question. I have to drive through there sometimes, and I will see his face smiling at me in the reflection of my car windows, or see someone sitting in my back seat. Bitch. No. I've even seen him standing in the middle of the road and a car drove right through him. That was about 4 years ago that he was banished, and my home and land feel cleaner. Sometimes, however, I get that same feeling of being watched, or I hear humming in the woods and I look to the tree that he used to hide behind, relieved when I don't see anything there. Just because you don't see it doesn't mean he's not there. I don't like that. That one freaked me out. Anyway, rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the least scary, creepy, spooky, 10 being the most. If you have a story of your own that you want to submit, you can do so on the link tree in my profile. Please don't forget to go follow my backup account because I'm saving up for a car, and any money that I make off of that account is going towards my car fund. Thanks. I'll see you at the next episode. Stay spooky, friends.
My sister and brother swear that they saw some sort of voodoo, brujeria, something going on just last night. Spooky story time while I get ready for bed. So every Monday, myself and all my siblings go to my mom's. That is family day. My mom makes all of us dinner and we sit around, laugh around. Last night we watched the basketball game. So again, we were there for a few hours. We were watching the basketball game, and then it started to get a little bit late. I have babies and my sister has a baby, and we were like, okay, it's getting a little bit late. It's time for us to go. So we all kind of left around the same time. My sister and brother left maybe 5 minutes after I did. We all go down the same street, and when I was on my way home, I saw this woman and I saw a dog with her, but honestly, I was just in a rush to get home. I didn't look at her. I did not pay attention to her. I was just ready to come home. A little bit after that I got home, they texted us in our group chat, and they said that they swore that they saw some sort of voodoo, brujeria, something going on in the middle of the road. Obviously, I asked, like, what are you talking about? What happened? What did you see? And they said that they saw this woman, and honestly, I think it's the same woman that I saw. But they saw this woman, she was standing in the middle of the road. So it's honestly a cross. And honestly, you know how they say that crossways, crosswalks, if you stand right in the middle, it's very powerful and you can do a lot of things. So they said that they saw this lady. She looked a little bit older, 50s, 60s, standing in the middle of that crossway, and she had a doll. And she had the doll like this, and she was shaking it, and she was yelling at it, and she looked very upset. Clearly, my brother and my sister were like, peace, we're out of here. And they didn't stay. They didn't want to look around. They didn't want to stare at her for too long, because honestly, you really don't know what someone is doing, and stuff like that is very dangerous. And it is also said, at least in the Mexican Hispanic world, that if someone leaves something bad in the middle of a crossway and you drive right over it, whatever negativity is left there is now attached to you. So yeah, I'm pretty sure they wanted to get out of there fast. They're not sure, but again, coming from a Hispanic heritage, Hispanic family, that's what it looked like. Lady doing some sort of brujeria or witchcraft, voodoo, something right down the street from my mom's house. Clearly and obviously they were freaking out, they were scared, but what do you think? Do you think that this woman was just going through a manic episode and coincidentally was standing in the middle of like a cross thing? Or do you think that she was intentionally doing something? Let me know what you guys think. And also send me your spooky stories. Bye!
I work at a spa hotel in the New Forest. I'm the manager, and I've got a very disturbing story about a couple. They went missing and no one knows what happened. Just to set the scene, this place is fancy. It's exclusive. I want to remain anonymous, so I can't be hugely specific about the surroundings. But imagine lakes and sauna experiences, tall pine trees and winding cycle paths. So this couple, I'd say they're in their mid-30s. I'll call them Hilda and Abraham. It's not their names, but I want to protect their privacy. They arrived late on a cold February weekend. I'm pretty sure it was close to Valentine's Day. They seemed like city folk. We were pretty quiet, which isn't unusual, being out of season. So I offered them an upgrade. A storm was brewing and they looked utterly bedraggled. They asked if we were still serving food, and I explained they'd just missed it. This is the sort of place where there's nothing for miles around. No restaurants or Deliveroo or late night pubs. Once you're here, well, anyway, I'm getting distracted. The upgrade was to a luxury lodge, a short walk through the forest. I said there was a wood-fired hot tub outside, and Hilda's eyes lit up. Once they checked in and looked a little calmer, I had our head waiter bring them artisan breads and our house special soup. I assured the couple they'd be treated to a delicious breakfast of homemade pastries, eggs from the local roaming chickens, the finest bacon from farmers nearby, the works. I went to bed satisfied I'd done my job as best I could. The storm rolled in through the night. In the morning, Hilda and Abraham arrived late for breakfast, and I couldn't help but notice they looked nervous. I wished them good morning and explained where they'd find the various buffet items when Hilda stopped me mid-sentence. Sorry to interrupt. Are there other guest houses by ours? We think someone tried to get in.
Oh, God.
The door handle was rattling. They glanced at each other, clearly not believing it was a mix-up at all. I remember being taken aback. When I say the hotel was quiet, I really could picture all the guests. I'd wish them all good night. There can't have been more than 12 people staying. I take on-site security very seriously, of course I do, so this rattled me instantly. I apologised and told them there's no other lodge by them and there isn't residences for miles around the estate. No one would have any reason to try their door. Lucky we double-locked the place, Hilda said. They were both looking at me. I was perplexed. I asked them what time it happened. They said it was close to 4 a.m. The rain was hammering down and they distinctly heard the door being violently forced to open. They explained they shouted out to piss off and it stopped. We laughed nervously and I assured them I'd follow up with the overnight reception team to find out if they'd seen or heard anything. They thanked me and I went on with my daily tasks. The weather was atrocious that day. I recall Hilda swimming in the outdoor pool. I even recall the brightly coloured dry robe she wore as she retreated into the forest to the lodge. I was preparing for the dinner service when Abraham strode into the foyer and started shouting, "Want to explain who did it? Who slashed my tyres?" He looked mutinous. We rushed outside into the dark pouring rain, and by the entrance to the forest, sure enough, the Tesla looked like it had melted into the encroaching mud. Hilda was by the tree line in her spa gown. I almost jumped out my skin. The white of the gown stood stock still and watching. I thought I'd seen a ghost. I heard her shout across the path, "This is a piss take." I shouted my apology in return, and she smiles and waves at me in a weird childlike manner.
Ooh.
I recall briefly getting chills from that. Anyway, I immediately ushered the young receptionist to call for car assistance as a matter of urgency. Abraham followed us in. Not good enough. Police! He jabbed his finger on the desk. Someone's just sabotaged my car, mate. They tried to break into our cabin too. I don't know what's going on here. We all agreed I'd get the police involved the following morning, and I said again and again how sorry I was. It was that night that Hilda and Abraham went missing. The storm was even worse than the night before, and the AA weren't able to come out till the following day. I recall saying goodnight, sending a bottle of champagne to their room, and praying, like the storm clouds, it would all blow over. Morning gusted in, and they didn't turn up for breakfast. The door of the lodge had been ripped off its hinges, and muddy footprints led into the dark forest.
Hinges.
The police arrived fast and cordoned off the lodge and started their searches. Here's where it gets really weird. The CCTV. We meticulously poured through every second to see what we could find. And at 3:49 a.m, Hilda walks out from the cabin. You can see the storm is shaking the trees, the leaves are blowing in every direction, but Hilda walks calmly from the lodge to the trees. The camera picks up her spa gown. She stands in the tree line. Back to the camera. She doesn't move. We fast forward the footage. She stays rooted to the spot for 23 minutes.
Okay.
Then she turns very slowly. She faces towards the main lodge, towards the security cam. She tilts her head and looks directly into the camera lens. She smiles and starts to lower herself to all four. She crawls towards us. My entire body goes cold. She crawls all the way to the main lodge and past the cameras. I pounced onto the switchboard to change cameras, but there's no sign of her in any other feed. Gone. The muddy footprints, they were measured, and they fit the exact size of Abraham. His shoes were left in the lodge. Wherever he went barefoot. The disappearance of the couple made international news. The grainy image of the woman in the gown on all fours in the storm somehow got leaked, and it was posted all over newspapers. Wild theories streamed in. Demonic possession, cryptids, you name it. I have to believe they suffered a mutual psychosis and are living a life deep in the forest. You might think the hotel suffered as a result of the deaths. I say deaths because as the years crept by, that's what everyone assumed. But in fact, dark tourism has saved us. Horror fans from all over the world come and stay in the lodge. They explore the woods. They bring their strange devices and readers and rods and gadgets.
Love that.
They tell me with fervour the place is haunted, and the Wendigo of the woods will find another victim soon. I nod earnestly and play along. I just want to keep my hotel afloat. Thing is, when it's late at night, I hear strange whispers on the wind. And on a few occasions, I've woken up with muddy hands and muddy knees without any recollection why. I scrub it off in the shower, and I try and forget the urges I have to enter the forest, to never look back. Wish me luck.
My ex was part of the cult of the Wendigo, and I made it out safely, though I'm not sure that other women did. This story was submitted by someone who wanted to be called Jane, and it is highly alarming. There are certain elements of the story that are disturbing. It's definitely the creepiest one that I've gotten dealing with dating a real person in quite some time. Crimes may have been committed, but as far as going to the police about these crimes, Jane says she has no concrete proof, and she has gone to the police about certain aspects, though not much can be done. Considering that the women that this story involves were adults, many of whom were part of marginalized communities or who had warrants out, and so the police think that they may have left by their own accord. But buckle in for this story, it is a crazy one. Last year, Jane got on a dating app and she immediately matched with a man named Charles. And they talked for a few weeks and had plans to meet, but she ultimately canceled those plans for one reason or another. And Charles got mad, so they stopped talking for a while. But eventually he reached back out and he says, "Hey, I would still really love to meet you." And Jane had nothing going on, so she was like, "Sure, let's do it." Talked for about another month before they did end up meeting up, so Jane felt like she had a good sense of who this person was, and he didn't put up any immediate red flags. But when they finally met up, she said that the chemistry was good, but he started saying like very strange things off the bat. One of the first stories that he told her was basically about how he had a psychic effect on women and how his ex-girlfriend had drawn pictures of him years before they had met. And he also told Jane a story about how he had fallen 40 feet but walked away unscathed. Told her, "This actually happened a lot in my life. I've had many brushes with death." Charles was middle-aged but looked about 20 years younger, despite the fact that when they started dating, Jane realized that he was a heavy drinker. He would finish a handle of vodka every couple days. Despite this, he never showed any signs of abusing alcohol. And actually, one night, soon after they started dating, Jane actually had to take him to the ER because he was experiencing withdrawal symptoms from not drinking that day. And when they admitted him, the nurses and Jane were shocked because his blood work, his liver panel, every other test they ran came back completely normal. Despite his struggles with alcohol, Jane continued dating him because he was charismatic, he was charming, and there were aspects of his personality that she enjoyed, but she did notice other strange habits that he had. Like everything he ate was dripping in fat. She said, "I've never seen someone eat so much fat and stay so lean, but I figured it was his metabolism." He also kept his house overwhelmingly hot. Heat was kicked up into the 80s, and he would complain about the slightest draft if she left a door or window open. Stranger still, he had collections of things that didn't belong to him all over his house, like a large box of dog toys, even though he didn't own a dog, or a box of makeup, or a set of women's clothing. And when she asked about them, he would always say, "Oh, that's so-and-so's," or "Oh, that's my ex-girlfriend's. People are always leaving things here and they never come back to get them." And she says, "Well, why don't you get rid of them?" And he said, "I will eventually," but he never did. Charles's house was in the middle of nowhere on a large parcel of property that he owned. And on this property, he had a friend that was camping, and this person was living in a camper, and his name was Sam. Jane was aware that Sam stayed on the property, but often at night when she would spend the night, she would hear other voices and conversations happening, what sounded like just right outside the door. But when she asked Charles about it, he would say, "Ooh, I don't know, maybe there's someone there," and sort of play into it like he was trying to scare her. And despite the fact that he had many cameras all over his property, they never picked up anything strange. One night, though, when she was staying over, Sam came running up from his camper to the house on the property, and he was complaining and yelling about seeing a large, tall, elk-like creature that stood on two legs, stood among the trees and stared at him. Charles laughed at this, and Jane said, "Well, did you take a picture?" And he said, "No, I didn't. I was too scared and I ran here instead." I assumed he was just imagining things in the dark and didn't put much more thought into it. As their relationship progressed, Jane noticed that Charles had more bad habits that she hadn't picked up on at first. He was insatiable with everything he did, with women, with gambling, with substances, with drinking, with food. Often let his ego drive when he was drinking, and he would say very strange things to her that seemed almost like he was self-inflating, and got more specific. He would say things like, "I'm so charismatic I could start a cult if I wanted. You have no idea what I truly am." He said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "I'm a god of sorts, but not a god. You would never guess what I'm talking about." He said, "All you need to know about it is that I'm more powerful than you would ever guess, both energetically and spiritually." When she pressed him for more details, he laughed it off like it was a joke. As Jane started picking up on the darker aspects of Charles's personality, he started asking her if she would be open to bringing in another woman into the relationship to engage in adult activities with them. Jane said she was not necessarily opposed, and initially they met up with a woman named Brenda, but ultimately decided not to go through with what they planned, though she and Brenda stayed friends. Next, they met a woman named Suzanne, who they did engage with physically. Afterward, Jane found out that Charles had told Suzanne that he and Suzanne were in an exclusive relationship and that Jane was the third person. He had told both women completely different stories, but after a lot of back and forth, Jane ultimately decided to forgive him and stay with him. She also stayed friends with Suzanne. And then there was Tiffany, who was supposedly just one of Charles's friends and who he had told her was dating a neighbor up the road. Anytime Tiffany would text Charles, he would get very secretive with his phone and put it away or not want to talk to Tiffany in front of her. And anytime Tiffany came over, Jane said that she just felt very bad energy coming off of her. And she actually felt scared of her because for some reason, she just seemed like the female version of Charles. As these other women kept popping up, Jane grew increasingly frustrated with Charles, catching him in lies constantly, and she no longer trusted him. And so the relationship deteriorated. And as it did, she became closer with Suzanne and Brenda, who helped paint a fuller picture. Meanwhile, Charles complained that Jane didn't fully understand him and that she didn't understand his sense of humor. But as she listened closer, what he joked about became chilling. When they would fight, he would say things like, "You wouldn't be anything without me. You're the type of woman to come out here into the middle of the woods to my property and you have no idea what I've done to women. How easy it would be for me to harm and you." And he would laugh and say he was just kidding. Jane said another alarming thing that he mentioned to her when she was still dating him was one night when she was over there, he pointed out to a space on his property that used to house a camper, and the camper was gone. And he said, "You didn't even ask me what happened to my camper, but I moved it to another property and there's no telling who's in it or what's being done to them right now." Soon after this weird comment about the camper, Jane found out that Charles had been cheating on her, and she caught him in a lie, and he gaslit her about it, and after 2 days of fighting, she finally ended it for good. After the breakup, she leaned more on Suzanne and Brenda for support because they had remained friends. And Brenda admitted that she was also terrified of Charles because one day, shortly after they had met, he had asked her to come over and help him clean out an outbuilding on his property. And when she went out to the property, he told her that all they were going to be doing was moving some trash bags into his truck and taking it to a landfill. When she walked into the outbuilding, she was met with a sight that looked something out of a movie. The room was filled with saws, and as she approached the bag, she noticed a gruesome smell coming from it. She said, "I have no idea what was in that bag. I had to stop what I was doing and throw up." Ultimately declined helping him, and he said, "Why? What do you think's in there? Something rotting, like a body?" He had assumed that it was a byproduct of something that Charles had caught while hunting, though he never explained. But after she got home, he sent her a string of messages telling her that he couldn't wait to get her into his camper, that he had all kinds of surprises planned for her. She didn't respond. When Brenda told Jane this story, a light bulb clicked in Jane's head because she remembered a time that she had been pulling meat out of a deep freezer at Charles's house, and he had told her it was elk, but the color was too pale. And she says, "I've grown up eating elk. I know what color it's supposed to be." It resembled pork, but she accidentally left some out on the counter, and Charles was extremely angry about this. But instead of throwing away the meat that had been left out immediately, he left it sit on the counter for a few days. When she told him that she would throw it out, he told her not to touch it and that he would take care of it. A few weeks after she and Charles broke up for good, he started messaging her, telling her that he was sorry and that he missed her. But she told him, "Absolutely not. I'm putting my foot down. We are not getting back together." And within 7 days of her telling him that, both Suzanne and Brenda disappeared. Suzanne supposedly reconnected with an ex-boyfriend who Charles also knew. But right before she disappeared for good, Jane received a strange text from Suzanne's phone asking Jane if she needed any substances. Jane said no, but the day before that text was sent was the last time that Suzanne was active on any of her social media platforms. Brenda was last heard from a few days after that. And after both of these women stopped responding and stopped checking their social media, Jane went to the police. She had already checked to make sure that they weren't in jail or a hospital, but when she went to the police, she was assured that if they still didn't resurface in a reasonable amount of time, they would double check. But Jane says that both women had legal issues, which she didn't disclose. But she says that people assume that they went into hiding because of those issues, even though those issues are unrelated, and both women used to be active on social media every single day. Soon after that, Jane found out that Sam, the man who lived on Charles's property, his friend, also went missing. He was sort of a transient figure anyway, though, so nobody really worried too much about it. Everyone in the town assumed he had just moved on. But the more Jane thought about everything, the more uneasy she felt. And she thought about the last conversation she had with Brenda the night before she went missing. They were talking about wendigos, and Brenda and her were discussing the wendigos' need to stay close to a source of heat, to feed off of fat, practice cannibalism. And Brenda started digging, and they found themselves down the rabbit hole and into a description of the cult of wendigos. She says they realized is a society of sorcerers. People then became this type of sorcerer by breaking certain cultural taboos. I can't go into too much detail here, but I'm sure you could find it if you look hard enough. Jane says ultimately she's glad that she made it out and that she has not been contacted by Charles since the weekend that Brenda disappeared. Still, though, she's not convinced that the final message from Suzanne was not her ex pretending to be her. But she says, "I'm telling you that there was something else going on that property beyond just addiction and dysfunction. That I'm grateful I got out with my life, though I'm not sure that Brenda and Suzanne were so lucky. If they weren't, I want to make sure that I tell their story." Even though they were part of communities that may be overlooked, people who struggle with crime or with addiction or with certain histories, they also deserve to be remembered. The names in this story have been changed, and I've left out any detail that could possibly identify where he lives because she said she is still worried that he could find her. Please be kind. She will be seeing the comments. If you have a story you think no one would believe, that leaves you feeling unsettled, or that you feel like you can't share with anyone else and you want feedback from a largely non-judgmental community, feel free to send it in. We would love to hear it, and I do my best to tell these stories in a respectful way.
Snacks in hand, the vibe is set, and once I start, don't eat too much because you gotta stay fine. But come on, bestie, it's... Yeah! Hi, bestie boo. I missed you so much. You wanna go get your snack? Okay. You wanna go get your gardening essentials? Oh, you got them? Okay. Those of y'all that love my stories but want them in long form, it's on my YouTube channel. I have compilations, so when you cleaning, studying, not studying, but you know what I mean. Same username everywhere. So, for the sake of the story, let's call this guy KJ. Now, KJ is one of my silent male followers. I know I have a lot of y'all. So, shout out to the silent male followers. Say hi in the comments. So, KJ has been watching me for a couple years now, so shout out to KJ. But a few months ago was when he decided to get my ebook. He had no specific reason. His life was perfectly fine. He really just wanted to silently support. Shout out to KJ! But the book, of course, turned his life upside down. I'm sorry, KJ. Anyway, so he gets the book, and of course, he does the fast. And everything was perfectly fine. Like, he did the fast. If anything, the fast helped him, like, mentally. So he was just like, oh, I just needed some help mentally. I feel better now. Feels like a whole lot of weight lifted off his shoulders, all of that. Until about a week after he does, the fast, his mom shows up at his house with, like, bags packed, suitcases packed, all of that. So he's like, hey, Ma. Mind you, his mom lives about 2 hours away. So he's like, hey, Ma, why are you here with suitcases packed? And his mom tells him, something in my spirit is telling me to come be with you. Again, there's nothing wrong with KJ's life. He has a great job. He lives by himself. He's not dating anybody. Like, he's flirting around, And his mom seemed really serious. She's like, nah, like something is in my spirit is saying that you need me, so I'm moving in. KJ's like, bro, Ma, if you just wanted to move in, you could have just said that. You didn't have to try to look like, what's the reason? What's the real reason? But Mom was really set on that specific reason, but KJ wasn't buying it. He assumed that her and Dad just got into like an argument or something. But then when he spoke to Dad is like, yeah, she just woke up one day. We didn't argue or nothing. She just woke up one day and said, my son needs me and I need to go to him. And Dad is also kind of thinking like, is she like soft launching, leaving me? Like, I don't understand. Anyway, it's his mom. He can't say no. And she moves in. And exactly 2 days after she moves in, he meets this girl at his job. Fine girl. Fine gal, no pimple. And he is almost instantly infatuated with her. And so they start dating and stuff, right? So 2 days after Mom moves in, he meets the girl. He sets up a date for that following weekend. So they go out on a date. They go on a second date and a third date, and it's going great. Mind you, Mom don't know about this, right? Because KJ's not going to share his love life with her. She's already invading his privacy. And so that also means that he goes over to her place because Mom is home, and Mom is kind of like strict a little bit, even though that's his home. He just not trying to bring her to his mom's house. Well, not his mom's house, but his house, but damn near his mom's house now. But at the same time this is happening, Mom is feeling the need to constantly pray for him. So he'll wake up in the middle of the night to her standing over him, just praying over him. And of course he appreciated that, but he's like, Ma, So fast forward to about 2 weeks later, his mom tells him, hey, we need to talk. So he's like, okay, let's sit down and talk. His mom tells him, you're losing weight. I can see it by your face. You're losing weight. And the weight that you're losing is kind of drastically fast. And so he's like, Ma, I lose weight sometimes. It's okay. And his mom is like, I know you don't believe me right now, but something is wrong. There's a reason why my spirit was telling me to come and move in with you. I don't know what it is yet. And now you're losing weight. Something is wrong. He's not trying to hear that because his life was perfectly fine. He did the fast. His life is still perfectly fine. So boom, one morning she wakes up, she comes up to him and she says, you're dating, aren't you? He's like, Ma, yeah, I'm dating. She I want to meet her. Bring her over for dinner. So he's like, really? You want me to bring her over? She's like, yeah, bring her over. And so they set it up. He tries to convince her to come to dinner. She really didn't want to come, but somehow he really convinced her, but it took a lot of convincing. And so that night of the dinner, come to find out, and he found this out after, the whole thing goes down, which I'm about to tell you. Mom anointed the doorway of the house. And I mean super anointed it. So that when she steps into the house, And so KJ's happy. He's so happy about it. Finally, this girl that I really, really freaking like, and I think that she might be the one, is gonna meet my mom. It's gonna be dinner. It's gonna be great. That way she'll be associated with my family and we can get closer. And he also was hoping that if the night goes well, you feel me, you gonna hit that shit. And she was giving him signs too that, it's gonna go down after dinner. So boom, she comes over. They start to have dinner, and she seems very uneasy. Now, usually, like, he would blame it on his mom, but his mom was actually being super nice, super attentive, like, super nice to the girl. No issues, no smart remarks, nothing at all, like she would usually do. If anything, it seems like the girl is being like that. Not in, like, a disrespectful way, but, like, slightly, like, her answers will be a little snarky, like, she'll, like, roll her eyes a couple times, but not, like, hard to where it's, like, disrespectful, you know? And so he's being thrown off a little bit. He's like, why are you being so mean to my mom? Like, she's being nothing but nice to you. And so that kind of really rubbed him off the wrong way. All in all, dinner was okay. Not what he expected, but from her. And it kind of, like, turned him off a little bit to where he didn't want to do it with her that night no more. Like, he wasn't even in the mood no more. And so after dinner, he takes her home. He comes back home. And so he kind of, like, wanted to see what his mom has to say about it, because he feels, like, so bad because, like, she was just, like, you know? And so when he tried to, you know, talk to his mom about it, and his mom had to be honest with him, it was like, that girl's not for you, bro. There's something wrong, and there's something that she's hiding from you. My spirit bothered her because I was being nice to her the whole night, and I know you noticed it. And something about my spirit was bothering her a lot, and that's not good. And although he finds his mom a little annoying sometimes, that's his rock, and she's never been wrong before. And so he definitely did take heed to that, right? So boom, as they're talking about it, mom is in the kitchen. Mom notices lemongrass in the kitchen, the tea, which is in my ebook. And mom is like, hey, what you know about lemongrass? And so he tells her, like, oh, it's this girl that I follow on TikTok. Like, she sells this ebook. And then he shows it to, you know, his mom. His mom is like, send that to me. So he sends it to her, and she reads the book. And the following day, she asked him, like, did you do that fast? He was like, yeah, I did. Like, I did that fast, like, right before you came. And mom is like, oh. Also, she's now following me. Hey, mom. And so she asked him, like, is the fast, like, the only thing in the book that you did? Now, I should also say mom is Caribbean, but KJ is super Americanized. So KJ is like, no, I didn't get a chance to do anything else but, like, the tea. Like, I got some of the ingredients, but I, you know. And so mom is like, can I give you the spiritual bath? KJ's like, ma, you know I'm old, right? You know, like, you don't have to bathe me anymore. Mom is like, listen to me. Like, there's a reason why you did that fast, and I felt it in my spirit that I needed to come here. Can I please give you the spiritual bath? And so ultimately, after a lot of convincing, he agreed. And it happened, and she gave him the spiritual bath. If you're Caribbean, if you know, you know, she, like, massaged him and everything while praying over him. That same day that he got that spiritual bath, that night he goes to sleep, and he has a dream that he goes to the girl's house, and he spends the night, and he wakes up in the middle of the night to something like itching, like his legs are itching. And so when he wakes up and, like, pulls the cover off, he realizes that she has maggots all over her private area. So he wakes up and he tells his mom about the dream. And when his mom hears about the dream, her eyes widen, and she tells him she has an STD. She has something. Stay away from that girl. Again, that's his mama, so he gonna listen. And now that he's putting everything together, the book, you know, he decided to do a little digging for himself. He goes over to her house. Moment where he's by himself, he goes through her personal belongings, and y'all, she found some medicine that he Googled, and the medicine is for HIV. She never disclosed that to him, and they were planning on sleeping together and everything. I almost give y'all a 10-minute story. The time is almost over, but yeah, that's basically the story. Don't forget to let me know what you're eating in the comments, and get your book. I can't stress that enough. I cannot believe I be doing this. Shout out to mom. Hey, mom. Okay, I love you. Bye.
Okay, I need to talk about something that I feel doesn't get enough attention. And then I'm going to tell you a story that made my skin crawl. We hear tons about Bigfoot and other cryptids, but there's something else that's been reported all across the United States for generations. I've actually done 2 other stories on it, and when I did them at the time, I had no idea that this thing existed or what it even was. This creature I'm talking about is Dogman. And while Bigfoot does get most of the attention, Dogman has been quietly accumulating some of its own. It's seen in rural woods and deep woods, and heavily in the hills of West Virginia. People who have come across Dogman describe it pretty consistently. Massive, muscular, bipedal, and covered in dark fur, a long snout and tall pointed ears, and the ability to drop from 2 legs to 4 to make great strides and leaps. It's like it exists somewhere between animal and something else entirely. Researchers have been documenting these things for decades, and the people who report them aren't necessarily seemingly looking for attention. They're hunters or truck drivers or regular people driving home late at night. They see something they can never fully explain, and they spend years trying to convince themselves that it was something else entirely. This story comes from someone who did exactly that for a decade. I came across this story recently, and I cannot stop thinking about it, so I had to share it with you. This story takes place on Route 7 in West Virginia. It was a long, dark stretch, specifically in Wetzel County. Not much out there for miles, just steep hills and deep woods. It was well after midnight, somewhere between 1 and 2 in the morning. This person was coming around one of the sharp turns near a little town called 100 when they saw something walking right along the white line to the right. In the dim glow of the headlights at first, it was just this massive dark shape. Side note, they had recently hit a deer and it was $1,500 in repairs, so they slowed way down and they straddled the yellow line, giving whatever this thing was plenty of space. Okay, as they pulled alongside, they looked out the passenger window. This thing's head and shoulders were towering above the car window. Even hunched over, it was enormous. They described it as having a long snout and very long pointed ears. And their exhausted brain tried to rationalize what they were seeing. At first, they remember thinking, wow, that's a really big dog. But they kept driving, too shocked to process. It wasn't until miles down the road, they said, that the logic caught up to fear, thinking, dogs don't get that big. Not even the largest breed would not be towering over a vehicle like that, nor would they be on 2 legs. So, trying to rationalize it now, they told themselves, yeah, it was a bear. Had to be a bear. A really weird, thin, muscular bear. And they held on to that lie because the alternative was too much to comprehend. But they said the image of that dog-like face wouldn't get out of their head. So for 10 years, they held on to this thought. They said they'd always get a little prickle of fear anytime they were driving along that route late at night. They said they never told anybody about it at first. They would just dread driving down Route 7 at night. Okay, so fast forward now to the fall of 2021. They found themselves driving down that same stretch of road near Mannington. It was the second week of November, late at night between 10 and 11 p.m. They said that night it was thick with a heavy rolling fog, so thick that even the brightest headlights didn't seem to put a dent into it. When all of a sudden, something vaulted up over the guardrail right in front of them. It was so fast, at first it disappeared into the mist, but then it reappeared as it was crossing over the yellow line. They said that rather than sort of running quickly across, this thing cleared the area in one quick fluid motion. And yeah, it was walking on 2 legs. So they slow way down and they're like white knuckling the steering wheel, praying that there are not more of them following in the shadows behind it. They said it was at least 7 feet tall and dark, almost as if it were a really big human being wearing a dark hoodie. And then that human illusion shattered as it dropped to all 4s, almost in like a predatory crouch. And then it turned its head back and looked directly at them. And they confirmed it was the same creature they saw 10 years ago. Long snout, tall pointed ears, very canine-like. Before they could even fully process it, they said this thing launched itself up and over a 6-foot embankment, and it disappeared into the thick forest. They had no words for what they saw. So not long after the encounter, they did attend a seminar in Fairmount, West Virginia. There was an investigator there named Les Odell, and he spoke a lot about the dog man that lives in northern West Virginia. He described bipedal canine-like creatures, not quite wolf and not quite human, and that they've been reported throughout these hills for generations. He said, they're not just animals. They're something ancient, something that seems to understand the roads and the people that travel them. And every hair on the back of their neck stood up listening to this guy, because they knew without a shadow of a doubt that that's exactly what they saw 2 different times. All right, who's from West Virginia? Who has had dogman encounters? I want to hear all the stories. Feel free to email them to me. The info is in my bio. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Also, there's been some discrepancy with the differences between dogman and what a werewolf is. So if anybody wants to help clarify that in the comments, I would greatly appreciate it. And if you are new here, you gotta follow for more creepy story time.
I have had a few stories that have come in about the dark web. I have only ever told one, and after I told that story, the person who originally sent it actually messaged me and asked me to delete it. I was not given a reason why. Shortly after this, their TikTok was gone. However, I did receive another story about someone's experience on the dark web, and it mirrored that one so much that it actually creeped me out. So this story was sent in by someone named Sean, and he said that this happened a couple of months ago. He was at home one night just surfing the dark web on his laptop. Now, I don't know anything about the dark web. I couldn't even tell you how to get there. I know nothing. But Sean said that he was surfing the dark web, and he's sitting in his room. He's alone. He does live by himself, so there's no one in his apartment. And he says that he comes across this video, and he says that he clicks on it. Now, I don't know how the dark web is set up. I don't know if it's like little like icons or if it's folders. I don't know, so don't come for me. But somehow he ends up on this video, turns it on, watches like the first 5 seconds of it, and he says in this 5 seconds, the vibe that he gets from it is that it's something that's like ritualistic or some type of worship. Next thing he knows, he says that it's 4 hours later. He comes to. He's still sitting in the same chair, staring at a blank computer screen, but has no memory of what happened other than those first 5 seconds of that video. Now, after this happens, Sean just thinks, wow, that was really freaking weird, and he kind of just goes about his business. He told me he tries to reason it in his mind as I was overly tired. I fell asleep at my chair and just woke back up. Okay. Sean gets up, he goes to bed, wakes up the next day, completely uneventful, actually forgets about the whole video incident on the dark web. And then Sean said that in his apartment, weird things started to happen. Things would go misplaced. He would hear weird knocks and weird booms and bangs. Remember, Sean does live alone, so this is kind of sending off red flags for him. He's thinking rodents or something. It's a hold of the management company of his apartment complex. They send in exterminators. They come in, they search everything. They see nothing. There's no rodents, no bugs, no infestations, nothing like that. Time goes on. These bangs, these booms, these weird noises, they continue to happen. Sean has no explanation. He's thinking maybe it's the neighbors. I don't know, whatever. A little more time goes on, and then Sean says that things start to escalate. He will physically see objects move, a chair, doors will close, things like that. This is not something that Sean had ever experienced before in this apartment. He says he reasons it in his mind as must be drafty in here. Apartment must need some maintenance, need to have the door seals checked. Maintenance again, they come back, they find nothing. There's no drafts, all the seals are good. All of these things are still happening, but Sean, over time, told me that these things just kind of like get worse. So after, objects start to move, Sean starts hearing disembodied voices within his apartment. He said, I can never make out what they're saying. It's always a mumble whisper. Sean once again tries to reason this in his mind with a logical explanation and just thinks, maybe I have new neighbors somewhere. And they just talk really loud and it sounds like a mumble whisper. Okay. And then Sean said that that's when the nightmares start. And he says that he dreams about just awful, awful things happening to the people that he cares about. He dreams about these terrible, grotesque-looking monsters to the point of where he doesn't actually even want to go to sleep, but your body can't do that. So anytime he does try to get some rest, he always has these very debilitating nightmares. Along with these nightmares, he is still hearing the disembodied voices. Objects are still moving within his apartment, and he is still hearing the weird bangs and booms. Sean starts to think that this may actually be a him problem, so he does make an appointment with the doctor. It does take him a couple of weeks to get in to be seen. He has an evaluation done. Doctor says, I don't see anything, but let me get you to a specialist. Waits another week to go to the specialist. They get him in, they do some testing, and they say, no, we don't see anything. Everything, seems fine. Could be stress, could be anxiety, but sometimes the human mind will create these things. This does make Sean feel better. They give him some medication for sleeping that's going to help with the dreams and some medication to control his anxiety. He starts to take those. Nothing changes. Creepy things that are happening within Sean's apartment are really starting to affect him. The medication is not helping, so he decides, I'm kind of at my wit's end, so let me take a different route to this. Sean said that he came to this conclusion one night when he was watching something on TV. I don't know if it was Discovery Plus or what, but there was a ghost hunting show that came on. So he said, you know what? I'm going to call local paranormal investigators and have them come in. I need to see if anyone else experiences anything within my apartment or if it's just me, and if it is just me, then yeah, it's here. Sean gets in touch with paranormal investigators. They come in. They don't capture anything on camera or on photo or even on a voice recorder, but they do have their own experiences in there where they hear weird bangs. They don't see anything move, but they do hear these disembodied voices that Sean is talking about, and this does make him feel better. This paranormal group says, hey, I think, let's get you into contact with a psychic medium and see if we can kind of figure out what's going on here. To make a long story short, Sean does get into contact with a psychic medium, and he goes and he sits down with her, and she starts to give him a reading. And she kind of pauses and she looks at him and she said, you've never experienced anything like this, prior, leading up to this, have you? And he said, no. And she said, there was nothing in your apartment, you've lived there for a while. He said, no. And she said, well, something has attached itself to you because of something that you were a part of. Sean tells this psychic medium, I have not been a part of anything. I go to work, I go to the grocery store, I come home. She ends up telling Sean that whatever has attached itself to him was invited in because of something that he observed or something that he saw, and he may not have even known that he was a part of it. Immediately, Sean's mind snaps to that video that he saw on the dark web where he watched the first 5 seconds and then completely blacked out. Came to 4 hours later. He ends up telling the psychic medium about this, and she says, I don't know. I can't prove that that's what it was, but if that's the only thing that you can think of and that's what comes into your mind when we're talking about this, then yeah, maybe. So Sean asks her, how do I get rid of this thing? She tells Sean, you're going to need to do a lot of light work, maybe some Reiki, I think that's what she said, which is going to be energy healing. You're going to need to get a priest in there because what is attached to you is very dark. And Sean was like, oh, is this a daemon? And she said, no, it's actually not. It's just a dark entity. So she goes on to tell Sean that this thing that is attached to him at one point was actually human. This is not something that was just born of darkness and, was always just a dark energetic form. This was actually a human, but it was not a good human. So as the years have gone on and this thing has been in spiritual form, it's just mutated into this very dark thing. Wasn't a good person when it was here, not a good thing in the spiritual realm. Sean says that is where the story ends for now. He will keep us updated. He is currently working on how to get rid of this thing, how to get it to detach from him. He said this only happened a few months ago and I have been just put through the ringer. I am doing all that I can, but I've only had this much time and I feel like I need this much time in order to fully handle this. Sean said that he definitely cannot prove that whatever is attached to him came from this video that he watched or stumbled across on the dark web, but it's the only thing that he can think that would have allowed this thing to attach itself to him. He said he can't help but feel like he saw something that he just wasn't supposed to see or shouldn't have seen. He just says, let this be a lesson to you. If you are going to cruise on the dark web, be careful what you watch. Good for me. I don't even know how to get there. So you won't catch me watching anything weird. I don't really cover the dark web much because it does scare me. I don't really want to see what's on there. I don't want to know. I don't want to be involved. Sean's story does really mirror this other user's story that they sent to me a while ago, which leads me to believe this is a thing that maybe happens on there. So don't go on there. And I'm sure not everything on there is bad, but I don't want to find out.
I have a few paranormal encounters that I've experienced throughout my life so far, but one in particular I would like to share. It happened when I was still in high school. We're talking 2005, 2006. I was between 15, 16 years old and shared a room with my younger brother. He was about 7 years old at the time. It was a fairly small room, but we made it work by having bunk beds. I slept on the bottom and my brother slept on the top bunk. Now, mind you, by this time in my life, I already had at least 3 paranormal experiences so far in that house. One of them actually being just weeks before this particular incident. So for some odd reason, this particular night when we went to sleep, something didn't feel right. We would sleep with our bedroom door open and sometimes it would bother me. Other nights, it wouldn't. This night was one that I felt the door should be closed, but my brother wanted the door open, so we left it open. I'm not sure what it was that caused me to wake up during the night, but I remember opening my eyes and seeing the bright glow of the moon shining through the window blinds. I had slept on the opposite side of the bed with my pillow at the foot of the bed, so I wouldn't face the open door. As I laid in bed, gazing up at the moon, I got this strange and eerie feeling, like someone was there behind me. I thought it might be my mom looking in to check on us, so I didn't react. I just laid there. The feeling grew more uncomfortable and creepy. I mentioned before, we had a pretty small room, so one of our dressers was literally right outside the door in the hallway. It was a medium dark brown 5-drawer dresser with gold shiny trim, just to give you an idea of how tall it was. That eerie feeling kept growing, and something told me to look out into the hallway. The hallway entering our room was pretty dark. Fortunately, the amount of moonlight that came in through the blinds was enough to light the doorway. Without getting out of bed, I turned and leaned over the side to see the door. It took a minute for my eyes to adjust before I could make out what I was looking at. When I looked at the open doorway, I saw the dark hallway and the dresser right outside my door, the moonlight reflecting off the shiny gold trim. But something wasn't right. The gold trim didn't shine all the way down to the floor. Something was blocking it. That's when I saw it. A short, pitch black shadow person. It was maybe 3 to 4 feet tall. I couldn't make out any details aside from the all-black hooded cloak it wore. It stood in the doorway without any noise or movement. In a panic, I grabbed the remote to my stereo and hid under my blankets. I turned the stereo on and gradually raised the volume until it was loud enough to get my mom's attention.
The one fact that creeps me out the most about America is basically this country is one big burial ground. You know, there's a good possibility that the house you're currently in is probably built on top of a burial ground, cemetery, or an unmarked grave. It goes back to the Native Americans who were here first, right? When they were pushed off their land, a lot of the early settlers built cities and towns right over the places that they considered sacred and where they buried their deceased. When explorers came here to America, right, and they were on their journey traveling through the country, right, if someone passed away, they didn't turn back. They just buried them right where they fell. And even going back to the pioneer days, right, people would pass away from illness and all these different, things with life, and they would just bury them in these mass graves. So there's a good chance that a lot of houses and businesses and places were built on top of burial grounds. In fact, there was actually a story about this place called Black Hope Cemetery. There was a subdivision built on top of this old African American graveyard. And everyone who lived in this subdivision reported strange happenings. Now, there was one family in particular who moved into the neighborhood. And at the time, they did not know about the fact that it was built on top of a African American cemetery. So when they first moved into this place, they noticed every night around the same time, their son would wake up screaming. They would go into his bedroom and they couldn't figure out why he was crying. And this went on for months and months. Then one day, there was a knock at the door. The husband answers the door. There is this older African American gentleman. And he said he looked very lost and confused. And he just kept saying, where am I? Where is my wife? Like, what happened to me? Why am I here? What's going on? And just over and over again. And this husband told him, wait here. Let me get a pen and a paper and write down your information. So he goes to get a pen and a paper. And when he returns, this guy was gone. Well, a couple months later, he gets another knock at the door. And it's this woman. And once again, she seems very, very confused. And she keeps asking him, what happened to me? Like, why does this place look so different? What are all these homes doing here? He said finally the last straw for them was one night he was in his bedroom. He awoke to a sound in the hallway. And out of the corner of his eye, he sees this man walk past the doorway. And so he gets up out of bed and he follows this man. And when he comes out into the living room, he sees this ball of light just hovering off the ground. And it chases him around the house. And so he didn't care. He got his family out of there. And soon they figured out that it was built on top of an old cemetery. We often associate these shapeshifters with dogs and wolves. But there have been several reports where people have reported that their cats have been seen to be shapeshifters. Now, there was this woman from Cincinnati, Ohio. She lived in this house for like 3 years. And one night, she hears scratching at her back door. So she goes to the window and she looks out and she sees this big, fluffy Maine Coon cat. So she opens the door and she picks this thing up and she's so excited. And instantly she falls in love with this thing. So she decides, I'm going to keep this cat. And, I'm lonely. I don't have many friends. Like, this will be my new friend. So over the next couple of days, this cat really doesn't do much. She notices it just sits there and watches her all the time. And it just stares at her just constantly. And one day, as this cat is just staring her down, she looks close into his eyes. And that's when it occurs to her, this thing has very human-like eyes. She thought, that's interesting. Well, over the next couple of weeks, she starts noticing this cat has very odd behavior. It always wants to be let out at night. It always is staring at her, even when she's sleeping. And so she said she started to get freaked out by this cat. And she would try to sometimes hide in the house from it, but it would always follow her around. She said then one day she was in the living room and this cat just ran up and started attacking her. And she kicked it away, but it kept running at her. So she runs into the bedroom and she closes the door. And she said she could hear the cat just clawing at the door. And after about 20 minutes, it stops. And so she starts to realize like she's kind of trapped in her own home by this cat. And she's afraid that if she gets rid of it, something will happen. So she deals with this behavior for like months. And then one night, she's asleep. She wakes up. And she gets this feeling like she's being watched. And as she looks at the foot of her bed, in this chair, she sees the cat. It's sitting up like a human. And it's just staring at her. So this freaks her out. She gets out of the bed and she goes out into the hallway. Well, the cat didn't like it. It jumps down and it starts chasing her. She runs out the front door and she closes it. And she runs to the neighbor's house and she calls the police. The police show up. They search her apartment. They don't find any cat. But she's adamant that the cat was in the house. She closed the door. There's no way it could have gotten out. So eventually she goes back home. And for several weeks, it was peaceful again. Like she thought, finally, this is over. But then she said one day there was a knock at the door. And she said she looked out the window. And as she looked through this peephole, she could see this man. He had long hair, he had this pale white face, and he just had this weird look to him. But when she looks at his eyes, she realizes that's the cat's eyes. So she doesn't answer the door. And this guy comes back several times, and then he just stopped. And still to this day, she thinks that that cat was some sort of shapeshifter.
Want to get creeped out? There's an eerie city lying beneath the streets of Metro, a city none of us knows much about. Ernest has been a visitor to that silent world of sewers, drainage pipes, and the ruins under old houses, and the memory of what he saw there will haunt him for the rest of his life.
Jesus.
Ernest. He was a 51-year-old Cabbagetown resident. He did not want to share his last name. He did not seek attention. He didn't want to be ridiculed.
Makes it more believable.
It does. The encounter took place the previous August during an unusually hot summer. The entrance to the cave was in between Ernest's apartment building and the building beside it, and accessing the tunnel required climbing 15 feet down a fire escape.
Oh, and he did that?
The story goes that him and his wife had a litter of kittens, and that one of them had gone missing.
Oh.
And he had heard like sounds from the tunnel that sounded like something was in pain, or so he was worried that the kitten went into the tunnel, and he wanted to go and see if it was in there. And once you get inside, it leads to a narrow chamber enclosed on 4 sides. It was pitch black. Ernest went about 10 feet in, and he was using a flashlight. This is when he saw the creature. He described the creature as having eyes that were orange and red. It was long and thin like a monkey, about 3 feet long. Like it wasn't like massive.
Oh, okay. Child-sized. Makes it more creepy.
Yeah. It had large teeth and weighed probably about 30 pounds and had slate gray fur. That's not the craziest part about this, though. It's not how it looked. It's what it said.
Oh, fuck. What did it say?
It said, "Go away. Go away," in a hissing voice before running down a side tunnel.
Oh my God, I would be out of there so freaking fast.
You and Ernest both, because he fled immediately and was shaking with fear. Lori also asked sewer workers about Ernest's story, because basically the theory is that there is something or multiple things living underground in the sewer system of underground Toronto. Sewer worker said, people who work on the surface just don't know what it's like down there. It's a whole different world. Who would have thought a few years ago that people would live in sewers? And yet that's what they found in New York a few years back. And then another was quoted saying, "I don't know what Ernest saw down there. I'll tell you one thing. If we could get in there, I sure as hell wouldn't want to go down alone." So that's super interesting. Like, these sewer workers were not scoffing at him. They weren't being like, this guy's full of shit. They were like, there might be something weird. Here are some theories of what people think Ernest might have encountered.
There was a creepy story that came out of Eastern Kentucky. Now, there was this man who worked for the DNR. And he said one night he found himself on these country back roads that cut through this forest. As he's making his way down the road, he notices up ahead there is this deer carcass. So he pulls his truck over and he takes this carcass and he puts it in the back of his truck. Now, because he was with the DNR, one of his jobs was to collect any animal that had been hit by a car. As he's putting this thing up in the bed of his truck, he begins to hear a sound off in the distance. But he just attributed it to the wildlife. So he gets back in his truck and he starts driving away. But all of a sudden, he feels the bed of the truck just go down, as if something heavy had fell into it. As he turns and looks around, he sees this very tall, dog-like creature, which he described as being part dog, part bear, and possibly like part hyena. And he had never seen anything like this before. And he said it stood straight up on 2 legs. It grabs the deer carcass and it takes off into the woods. So he speeds off. And at the time, he thinks this is just some sort of animal. A couple days later, he finds himself driving on the same stretch of highway. And as he goes past the same spot where he had encountered this animal, he sees a man walking. So he turns his car around and he parks and he gets out and he goes up to him. And he says, "Hey, look, you don't want to be walking on this road, especially at night. There is some kind of wild animal out here." and it's dangerous. And the whole time he's talking to this guy, he just has a grin on his face. So he tells the guy, like, look, let me give you a ride down the road. There's a gas station. I'll drop you off there and you can, get picked up or get a ride or something. So the guy gets in his truck and they drive up to this gas station. So the guy gets out and he's going to lead this guy inside to talk to the gas station attendant. But he said this guy that he'd picked up comes around the side of the truck and he comes over to him and he gets really, really close. And he started to sniff him like a dog. So he pushes this guy away and it's kind of like, what are you doing? Like, what do you think? I just gave you a ride. I'm trying to help you out and you do that. The guy turns around and takes off running. So he thinks, okay, that was crazy. So he gets in his truck and he goes home. Later that night, he's in bed. He awakes to the sound of something messing with the front door. And he can hear the handle jiggling. So he goes and he grabs his sidearm. And he gets the phone. He calls the police. And as he waits in his bedroom for this intruder to come into the home, 15 minutes pass. And it goes quiet. And whoever it was, it seemed like they left. So he goes out into the hallway and he kind of tiptoes down. And he gets to the living room. He notices the front door is open. So he grabs, onto his side piece. And he hears this sound in the other room, like something is scrummaging through this bedroom. And just then, the police show up. And you can hear the police saying, come out with your hands up in the air. And whatever this was, it booked it out of the bedroom and it flew right out of the front door. And it looked exactly like the thing he had seen 3 days prior. And so when he goes out and talks to the police and he's like, you've seen that, right? Like that was not any known animal we see around here. However, the police were adamant that it was just a bear. And as he started to think about it more, he realized this thing tracked him back to his house.
This right here is the exact reason why I am scared of hospitals, especially if I'm there alone. It all started with this footage right here caught on camera in a hospital called Felix Bulnes in Chile. In this footage, you can see a patient who was completely alone in the room, struggling like he was trying to fight or escape from something. So this was very weird and unsettling because 2 seconds ago, the man was just laying, so what happened? After hearing a loud noise of him struggling, luckily the nurse arrived, and when she freed him, he explained that he was being strangled. As you can see, there is something around his neck. This whole thing was so weird and people couldn't find an explanation, so they immediately blamed the man. They were like, okay, you know what? This guy completely lost it. He's doing it on purpose. I mean, he's in a hospital after all. No disrespect. Yes, most of the people who saw the footage basically blamed the guy, saying he's crazy, but let me tell you that they were wrong. Because after that the footage went viral in Chile, some people started sharing their own experiences with the Felix Bulnes hospital, saying that this hospital is haunted or at least something is wrong with it. This video, for example, posted by a guy who already visited the hospital, you can hear a weird noise coming from the hallways and you can even see the windows violently shutting. There's even a silhouette that appears for a millisecond, but for that you really have to focus. I'll try to put it in the end of the video. Most of the videos that I saw about this hospital were scary, okay, but they were mostly basic stuff. Doors closing by themselves, lights flickering, but then I saw one video that left me in total shock. This is the video that I was talking about. In case you don't know what you're looking at, these are some kind of hallways, and as you can see there is windows here, but I want you to focus on this strange balloon right here. Yes, this orange balloon right here is the main thing that you should focus on. If you're asking, bro, why? Well, because it was moving by itself. No shit, bro, that's the concept of a balloon. Balloons are supposed to move, float in the air, Well, that's exactly the problem. This balloon right here was floating weirdly. It was going straight forward instead of staying in the air.
Ahí está, ya la prendí, ¿qué pasa? ¿Qué pasa?
Ay, no. Salí de la pieza de las 4, así. No sé cuándo salí, tenía otra. Cuando vine para acá, se me empezó a pegar, boludo. Me pegué un cabrazo y ahora lo veo.
Empieza la estática, boludo. Está lejos.
Está viniendo para acá.
Ay, la concha de la lora. La pibita de la camasita me dijo que le tocaron la pierna, que le apretaron la pierna. Ay, mierda, se viene para acá.
Pero si viene para acá, pelotuda. No. ¿Te ha prendido el aire,
¿Qué sé yo? Sí, creo que sí.
Tomátelo.
No,
Vamos para adentro,
me
boludo.
fui la mierda, la
No,
concha de la lora. Ahí está.
Asomate,
Pase
boludo.
largo, boludo.
¿Ves?
Ay, la concha de la lora. Ay, la puta que te parió.
You see what I was talking about? Just before the window closed, you can see something over here. But hey, I'm not gonna lie, this might be the window's reflection. Same thing goes to this man right here, maybe he just lost it. I still can't find an explanation to a balloon literally visiting you.
My dad waved at me through the window, but he wasn't home. So this happened back when I was still living at home, and I got home from school early, and I remember walking up to my house, and I was looking through the front window, and I saw my dad. He was just looking out the front window. He made eye contact with me, and he just waved. It was kind of a weird wave, like there wasn't a smile or anything with it, but I just waved back, and then I was gonna go walk into my house. The second I walked into my house, something felt very off in the air. It was very quiet. I yelled out, "Dad," and nobody responded. I went and I checked the living room. It was empty. This made no sense because I know that I just saw my dad through the window. I checked my kitchen, empty. I checked my bedroom, empty. His bedroom, empty. And then I realized that his car isn't even in the driveway. This made absolutely no sense, so I called my dad on the phone, and he picked up pretty immediately, and I said, "Hey, like, where are you?" And he said, "I've been at work." And I'm like, "You haven't been home at all?" He said, "No, I haven't come home at all today. I left this morning and I haven't been back." I didn't tell him what I saw. I just hung up, and then later on in the day, he came back home in the evening, and I hadn't checked the rest of the house after that point. I don't know, I tried to let it go. Anyway, so he came back home in the evening, and I was like, "Are you sure you didn't come home for lunch or anything?" And he said, "No, I have not been back at the house." So he just summed it up as like, "I don't know, maybe you saw something else, maybe it was your imagination." And so I sat there thinking I was crazy until a few days later happened, and I was in my living room, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw something in my hallway, and it was the same height as my dad, same shape as my dad, and it was standing there just watching me. Eventually, it moved back into the hallway like it wasn't trying to be seen. I never saw it again after that, but to this day, I still close my curtains before it gets dark at night because I sit and wonder about whatever I saw in the window that first day and how it was already inside of my house.
I need to tell you guys this ghost story. This story was sent into my email, and if you have any ghost stories, paranormal encounters, or scary stories that you want to share, you can send them to the email in my bio. I never fully believed in ghosts until something made me a skeptic. At first, things didn't feel paranormal. It felt like regular nightmares. I was in elementary school at the time that all of this started happening to me. Now, I had had nightmares before. I'd wake up scared and maybe seek out my mom, and then everything would be okay again, but these weren't normal nightmares. This nightmare was the same nightmare. Every time, every detail, every night. Over and over and over again for years. I'd go to bed hopeful that this night would be the night that I would break the cycle. This night would be the one that I'd have a normal dream and I could stop this nonsense, but it would start. The same 3 or 4 dreams, in rotation, as always, just like every other night. I'd wake up gasping for air and drenched in sweat, feeling like something had just been in the room with me. I tried to rationalize it. It was stress. I was growing up. I was having an overactive imagination, something, anything. But my nightmares began to leave my dream state and started spilling over into my life while I was awake. I'd be sitting in my room and I'd hear it, right next to my ear. A breath. Soft. Close. Too close. Sometimes it would say my name, and it happened so often that I was able to note that it was never the same voice. They were always different. Sometimes it sounded like a man, sometimes a woman, but the thing that did stay consistent was that it was always just quiet enough to make you question if you had actually heard it, or question your sanity altogether. Then happened the night that I will never be able to forget. I couldn't sleep this night. Maybe I was trying to avoid it because I knew that it was coming. Maybe my body was trying to protect me. Either way, as I was laying there, I felt it. All the hairs on my body stood up, and I knew that it was there, in the room with me. But when I dared a look around, I saw nothing. Eventually, I must have drifted off because suddenly I was dreaming, and in the dream, I saw it. A tall figure standing by my door, right where I had just chanced a glance when I was awake. It didn't move, it didn't speak, but it exuded this intense energy that made me feel like it was in the wrong place, like it didn't belong there. And then I woke up. As soon as I registered that I was awake, something crashed down on top of me. A glass panel from a window. Now, my house was old, built sometime in the early 1900s, and it had all the usual old house quirks. Every step creaked, every door made a noise, every corner seemed ominous, but a window just falling like that. Eventually, I got so used to the nightmares that I started fighting back. I remember telling myself one night, if I know I'm dreaming, I'll wake myself up. So I did. Every time a nightmare started, I'd force myself awake, sometimes by slapping myself in the dream over and over again. By middle school, the nightmares were gone, but the feeling never left. It always felt like there was someone just around the corner, just far enough that it was out of the way, but close enough to watch me. Then high school came, and by sophomore year, things started up again. But this time, it wasn't in dreams, it was real. I noticed it had returned when I was downstairs doing laundry. It was the middle of a bright and sunny day, and I was loading in my whites when I heard footsteps behind me. At first, I thought it was my little brother, so I called out to him as I'm pouring in detergent, but I got no response, which struck me as weird, because even if he had been trying to spook me by sneaking up on me, he would have at least laughed. So I went back to what I was doing, waiting for him to jump out or something, and that's when I heard it again. But this time, it wasn't walking. It was running towards me at full speed. I braced myself for whatever impact I was about to endure, and I was so scared that I screamed, and the second that I did, it was gone. I turned the corner immediately to try and catch whatever had been there with me, and nothing. No one. I was completely alone. Then came another night at my dad's house. It was late, around 3 or 4 in the morning, and I couldn't sleep. The same feeling from years prior started to creep up on me, and I felt someone there with me. Someone I couldn't see. Eventually, I started to drift off, half asleep, half awake, and then I heard it. My mother's voice, clear as day and right behind me. Are you ready? Exactly how she used to wake me up for school, and without even thinking, I answered. And in that same breath, I realized that it couldn't have been my mom, because my mom wasn't there. I turned slightly, my eyes still closed, trying to listen, and that's when I caught another voice. But this time, it wasn't hers. It was deep and guttural and distorted. I know you're awake. I felt it start to close the distance between us until I could feel it right next to me. I fought to keep my eyes closed, but I also fought to stay awake. The idea that this thing could reach me in my dreams was enough to keep me up until the sun rose. My junior year of high school, I had this mirror from one of my sisters, and I gave it to my little brother when I moved rooms. Everything was fine until the second night that mirror was in its new home. My little brother came running into my mom's room crying and hysterical, beyond the point of being able to calm him down. He wouldn't talk about it for days, and when he finally did, he just said one thing. He saw something in that mirror. Something that wasn't human, staring back at him. He refused to ever talk about it again after that. We got rid of that mirror, and then everything stopped. No more voices, no more footsteps, no more presence. I'm 18 now, and I still live in that same house.
And maybe all of the fighting that went on in that home while I was growing up had something to do with what went on there. Maybe it was attached to the mirror, I don't know, but all I know is that to this day, I still can't explain it.
Might have known the story of real life boogeyman.
You guys, we literally have trees moving and a reborn doll growing hair. Hi, my name is Sammy, and I am your new favorite creepy content creator because I talk about everything creepy and weird. Horror movies, paranormal stories, haunted locations. It doesn't matter. If I find it creepy or weird, I'm going to talk about it on here. I'm actually shocked that more people aren't talking about the original doll whose hair grows. She's actually in a temple right now, and you can go and see her. As far as I know currently, she's a Japanese doll named Okiku, and the legend is that she belonged to a 3-year-old little Japanese girl who got sick, and the doll soon after started growing hair. It was growing very, very long, to the point where it still grows hair. A priest regularly trims this doll's hair. The spirit and the energy with Okiku is not evil. Now, the doll on TikTok that's growing hair, I believe she's actually now just sold it to Elton for the museum, but that doll, she says that she doesn't think it's a bad spirit, but she says this right after she said she was having nightmares. And I'm sorry, but benevolent entities or spirits do not give you nightmares. And one thing that we have to remember when it comes to anything using a vessel, especially like a doll or something like that, a negative entity will pretend to be something else in order to get you to trust it. And from the way she was talking about the doll in her videos, it almost seemed like it was trying to develop like an attachment to her. I mean, my God, have we not seen Annabelle? Have we not seen Annabelle? This is what these things do. I think it's a good idea that she sold the doll and got rid of it. You have to be so careful about what you bring into your home, especially things from like thrift stores. I saw some people telling her to burn it. Do not ever, ever. If you think something is haunted or has any kind of entity attached to it, do not burn it. It does not destroy the thing attached to it. When you have an entity attached to some sort of vessel, so that thing becomes a conduit, when you burn that thing, whether it be a doll, a Ouija board, any kind of haunted item, if you burn it or destroy it, you destroy the vessel, freeing that thing. You don't know that that vessel wasn't the one thing containing that entity. And now you've set it free in the world. If you use a Ouija board and you conjure up something bad and then you burn it or break it, you have released that thing out into the world to go and wreak havoc wherever it wants. You don't ever do that. If you think you have a haunted item, do not burn it or destroy it.
I saw a portal with shadow figure beings going through the portal. This happened 2 nights ago.
You can't see it from here, but it's literally flying sideways and it's huge. Oh, what is that? I hear a plane behind me. Whatever that is about to land in the woods, and it's sideways. It's literally flying sideways and it's huge. That light is not supposed to be there. Whoa. There's like shadows moving in it. Shadows moving in it. With my eyes, it looks like thousands of shadows passing through the light. Like, there is no house back there. Whoa.
What she's looking at is man-made, human.
It's man-made to look like something extraterrestrial. I mean, what she experienced was real, but this was man-made to look like something extraterrestrial. That was not extraterrestrial. I couldn't feel any ETs in there. All I felt was humans manning it and managing it. The shadows she saw were holograms of, it's like, and maybe the word hologram isn't correct, but that's where that came to me, because it's like a reflection of the men manning it in the operation room. That's what I'm getting. So whatever room this is being manned in, it's like a reflection of them, and they're able to be in two places at once. These are humans learning and practicing how to be in two places at once. What I'm being told is humans are doing this for two reasons. One, to confuse us, so we stop believing that we are actually engaging with ETs. So we stop believing that they are out there. Two, it's like to, ultimately it'll be used to distract enemy, to be used at war. Why else do they make stuff? Sure. Now, that influx in 2024, combination, ETs, UFOs, man-made. But there is a reason why she witnessed this, and there's a reason why we are all witnessing this. We have to hone our intuition so we can differentiate between something that is made by humans and something that is ET, because we want to have the autonomy to decipher what we are seeing, what we are looking at. And when it comes to ETs, or when it comes to this, I don't know, maybe it's like she said, plasma type energy, whatever this is that humans have created, there is a distinct difference when it's ET energy and when it's man-made. We all have psychic skill sets. This is in all of us. There's no time for us to doubt that anymore. We need to take ownership of that. And we need to learn to understand the difference between intuition, emotion, the mind. You learn that through meditation. You learn that through balancing the emotional body, through eating healthy, through exercising, through going through therapy and releasing your past so your past isn't dictating your present experiences. And then when you hone that intuition, you will do exactly what I did when you see things like this. And you will know the difference between if it's ET or man-made. And if it's man-made, you don't need to get into it, okay? When it's ET, you will use your intuition to determine if that group is for you to communicate with.
I need to keep reminding my mom who she is. She asked, "Where am I?" And I just sighed, looking over my book at my frazzled mother, Charlotte. "Oh, good. You're awake. This is our home," I said, and I put my book down and said that it has been our home for the past 20 years, Charlotte. But then she asked, "Who is Charlotte?" And that one simple question seemed to break whatever was left of my heart. See, every day I'd wake up with just a little sliver of optimism, only to be sorely reminded of my mother's condition, which just lurked over us like a shadow. I gently reached out to hold her hand and guide her to sit next to me on the couch. And then I tried to wrap my arm around her, and she flinched, almost like instinctively. And that felt like a slap to the face. "You are Charlotte, my mother of 23 years. I began my all too familiar monologue. "You are an independent interior designer, and you're brilliant at it. You've designed many beautiful places, including this, our home." And she just stared at me dumbfounded, partly because this seemed so unfamiliar to her, and partly because of the heavy dosage of medication. She just whispered no. So I asked, "No, what, Mom?" And her eyes were just brimming with tears, and she said, "I'm not your mom. I need to leave. I'm not Charlotte." And she was screaming and just full of rage. I read on the internet that this would happen sooner or later, but I just thought I had more time, like I tried everything under the sun to not let her Alzheimer's win. We did long car rides, walks on the beach, Sunday night board games. I kept old traditions alive in hopes of beating the disease. So anyways, I had inched closer to her trying to get her to calm down, but she stood up way too quickly and pulled away and just screamed, "Get away from me, I don't know you." I stood up just as her legs began to wobble and her breath was getting heavy, and I swooped to catch her just as the medication was putting her back to sleep again. I managed to carry her back to the bedroom and tuck her in, and I was just thinking, you'll remember it all in good time. Hours later, once I picked up my book again and began reading at the page that I left off on, I could feel that familiar sensation at the back of my neck that got all prickly and made me hot and irritated. It was my conscience reminding me that the woman in my bedroom will wake up once again, ask the same set of questions, and I'll have yet another chance to try to convince her that she is Charlotte, my mom. My dead mother that I lost many nights ago due to my drunk driving. I couldn't help it. You know, this woman, her eyes were so similar to my mother's that it must have been fate that sent her my way to, like, redeem myself. And, you know, maybe if I loved, cherished, and adored her the same way, my mother would be alive for longer. I just need some more time.
Have you guys seen the video of what people believe to be a giant caught on camera in Mexico? This video was taken in La Blanca, Mexico, and it was posted a few years ago. And it shows what looks like a person walking along this mountain range, which is way off in the distance. But despite the mountain range being so far off in the distance, the person walking along it looks huge. And obviously that's not normal. If you were to see somebody walking on a mountain from that much of a distance, they would look more like a little black speck than a full-blown human being. But I'll let you take a look and decide for yourself. This is one of those videos where the opinions are super divided and like one half believes it's a giant and the other half believes it's just a person. Personally, I'm leaning more towards giant just because I can't comprehend how they can be that big with the mountain being that far. But as always, let me know what you think.